Alright, so in 2008, 2 years in the launch of the PS3, the second major spin-off for the PSP was done. It was Ratchet and Clank, still done by High Impact Games, which took the occasion of and learning of the thing that happened inside matters and recycle a bunch of assets while introducing new stuff to make something different. You'll be able to see eventually. First and foremost, this game is squarely entirely about Clank. That is to say, Ratchet will still play a part in the plot and you will get to play as him occasionally. So don't worry about that. It's not a situation like Deadlocked where Clank was just your mission control. So
I was about to wonder if basically this was just Clank's answer to Deadlocked.
thankfully, no. Again, it's more homogeneous, but as you will be seeing, this comes with its downgrades. But again, one thing at a time. So we start with it being at the Boltaire Museum.
No, game. Usually the museums are the after credit stuff that we get by
One of
going
the
at a
popular
certain time.
jokes is that people are wondering if High Impact just wanted to make a Sly game with this one, because there are a couple of moments that feels like it should have been that instead.
Oh boy.
Well, not necessarily in a negative way, just, gameplay style and setting.
This is the only game in the franchise that I haven't actually played, but I've always heard very negative things about.
Honestly, it's interesting. Like Deadlocked.
And we start with, of course, someone being framed, and it's Ratchet, clearly having something on his head, but, we're just pretending it doesn't happen, it's not happening.
So let me get this straight. Clank is playing James Bond, and Ratchet is playing Obi-Wan Kenobi?
Let's go with that. Well, let's hear our briefing first.
Were you able to protect the Eye of Infinity?
No, not only that. I saw something quite disturbing.
Hold on, I'm receiving a news feed from your location. I'll patch it through.
Another sexy robot.
At
At least we got the reporter.
Yeah, at least Gretchen is actually not being endangered on the field.
In a surprising twist, galactic hero
Wow, they already got Ratchet into prison in just a matter of seconds.
Also, he clearly has something on his head, but we're pretending and no one is seeing it. Trust me, it's important for later. Also, in case you wanted to hear James Arnold Taylor sounding villainous for Ratchet, there you go. I know he has played occasionally a couple of villains over the years, but this is a bit new.
This is a sad turn of events for one of the galaxy's foremost heroes. Darla Gratch, Channel 64 News. Oh, I'm sorry, Agent. I know you and Ratchet are friends.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that this is all just acting for one of Clank's Agent Clank
That's what
movies,
Insomniac is pretending for this entire game.
The ID is positive. That was Ratchet. Agent, there's no time to waste. I need you to re-enter the museum and find out where the eye has been taken. Inside the museum, you'll find robot security guards, tank bots, and guard dogs.
It's clear that Clank is actually believing that Ratchet is being framed. He's not believing that in the slightest that he will be capable of doing that. So it's part of the mystery to see if he is correct, and if so, what happened.
Oh, my point is the assumption that I assume that at the end of the game, they're gonna pull a Looney Tunes back in action, and this turns out that this is all just them acting on the set of his latest...
that's not happening. The acknowledgement of being an episode is on in meta.
Oh. Okay, so why the hell was Clank doing his Agent Clank shtick then?
That's because, for this game, Clank is a secret agent. Basically, this is a High Impact just deciding to take the premise of Clank being having a secret agent show and just rolling with all of the James Bond parodies they can throw at the screen.
Like, if this were a dream sequence or, again, basically acting for one of his movies, I'd get, but no, Clank is not actually Agent Clank. That was literally a plot point in the third game.
Like I just said, Jova, it's, again, out of universe, this is just how the game is treated. So, again, just roll with it.
As for this game's Japanese name, it takes a rather different approach. It's called Clank and Ratchet Secret Mission Ignition.
I
Get
mean,
it? It's
fair
Clank's
enough.
name first instead of Ratchet.
Like I said, you get to play with Ratchet enough to justify him being present in the title. I will concede that. But just to mention, the gameplay is basically slightly different. While technically on paper it has the same core of the other Agent Clank games, obviously it's structured in a more bite-sized way. Clank, as you can see, also is a bit more agile, both in movement and the jump and the combos, to facilitate. But this is not primarily a fighting game. There is some level of degree of, shooting sequences, but you're encouraged first and foremost to use stealth to either avoid enemies or taking them from behind, and you actively get rewarded with the stealth points, which help raise your nanotech just as much as you would do by killing an enemy. So again,
Why
the game
did they
actually bothers to
change?
reward you like that.
Quite a change. I notice also, and again, it's just a coincidence, but interestingly enough, in terms of black sheeps of the franchise, it seems that by release date they came in a flock, because Deadlocked, Size Matters, and now Secret Agent Clank, again, all some of the less regarded titles in the series, aside from
I guess
the
you can call
2016
collectively the
reboot.
period the Dark Ages if you want, but if I had to be honest, if this is what the lowest of the franchise is supposed to represent, I'm glad, at the very least, we haven't reached, critical, failure levels, because I've seen far worse.
The agency rewards agents that complete their missions with stealth and secrecy. Sneak by your enemies and get bonus nanotech for you and your weapons.
So, in terms of the weak games, okay, we know that Deadlock didn't get referenced much until, Rift Apart.
Again,
and
much like with
Size
Size
Matters
Matters,
hasn't.
much like with Size Matters, the duology as a whole hasn't been referenced at all. And by 2017, Insomniac is basically stating that while Size Matter apparently happened, this is the entirety of this game is just an in-universe episode of the show.
That probably definitely works out because, again, this is the only time he's an actual agent, and again, I wouldn't harp on this too much, except for the fact that it was literally a plot point of the third game that Nefarious mistakenly thought he was actually Agent Clank, when no, he's just an actor.
Especially because we don't really get to have a secret life kind of scenario where Clank has to, live both lives as a regular bot and as a secret agent. It's just fully on the jobs that you do for, your agency.
Wow, the enemies are fooled by that.
Classic
Cartoon
trick.
logic. It's classic cartoon logic, those.
But
I mean,
the cool thing about this place is that the Boltaire Museum, it's all about the history of robots in the Ratchet & Clank universe, and soon enough, not right now, but soon enough we will actually get a couple of plaques that will tell us the different ages and steps of, robot kind for, humorous results. Also, I'm happy to report the ledge walk, climbing and walking is actually faster, so thank God someone got it right.
Hooray!
This is an agency drop
I will say this, at the very least, it's less dumb than people thinking that Mario totally did it, even though the Mario that actually did it is a Shadow Mario, clearly.
Anyway, here's your first weapon, the Tyrang. It's a bow tie, but it has muscles. Again, even if you still have an arsenal, but it's more secret agent, themed. In this case, weapons that, while are ultimately efficient against the enemy, it should be still your last resort. The game will force you sometimes into sequences where you need to shoot things, and they still apply the rules of the regular arsenal of Ratchet & Clank, as in they level up the more you use them, and the more enemies you kill with them. So you still are encouraged to use them, but they have to be resorted as a last tool. Thankfully, you will get, better as the game progresses. So it's not like the game gives you very weak tools. They are just balanced, basically. Also, check this out. Ha! The evolution of robot kind.
I will say, it does seem like there's a solid enough gameplay here that if they had wanted to, this could have been a continuous spin-off series of the
The
franchise.
iBot 3000's unique life cycle revolves around posting pictures to social networking sites and leaving inane comments. It's literally social media AI. Fuck me, this timeline is so dumb.
This implies that robots grew from social media AI in this universe.
This dipping bird robot was responsible for many revolutionary advances, from Zen meditation to perpetual motion.
Is this one of those cases where the far future thinks this about this thing that we clearly know was... oh my god, Clank, no! That's an exhibit.
Right, well, two things. One, it looks like a pretty shitty exhibit anyway. And two, why would you put bolts inside the things?
Anyway, this next gadget is not for combat, it's just purely for stealth. The Blackout Pen. It squirts ink that is so powerful, it literally blocks away lasers at their source. Don't ask me how it works. According to your content, apparently it uses dark matter in its components. So, you could create ink from dark matter. And here's the other major gimmick for Clank to get away with stealth. Takedowns from behind, you initiate with square, and you have to have, you guessed it, a quick QTE sequence where you have to press 4 buttons in sequence, which are randomized all the time, to perform the takedown. Fail, and the enemy instead will notice, and you have to kill it conventionally. Thankfully, only in a few occasions where the mission specifically tells you to, you actually get a game over if you fail the takedown. But for the most of the game, you're perfectly fine even failing if you think you are capable of taking the enemy on your own.
It's not entirely like Sly Cooper, but I'm definitely seeing what you mean, that somebody may have been a fan of that series with this one.
Which also, again, it's a thing that I mentioned... I think towards the end of Size Matters, I forgot specifically when. It baffles me that Sly never got a PSP spin-off on its own, considering both Jack and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank did. They could have easily have it set just set between 1 and 2 if they wanted.
Ah, yes, the legendarily stealthy Clank with that red light on the top of his head.
Wasn't there technically Bentley's Hackback? Like, I know, like, you know, technically...
minigames, and it's a digital download only for the PS3.
Oh, never mind. I could have sworn it came to the PSP, but I guess not.
Alright.
I mean, I guess we could say that Thieves in Time technically got the handheld treatment with the Vita.
Again, technicality.
No, typically, and I played that one. I haven't played this one, but like typically when it comes to these PSP spin-offs, Daxter's the one that I think is the overall best.
These fossilized weapons predate laser technology and were likely crafted during the grim days of a monster truck era. The laser sight on the Stone Axe is a classic example of robots improving on organic technology and yet somehow still missing the point. Didn't you mention recently, because I did raise a point to talk about Dexter, that you overall still preferred the God of War spin-offs?
Well, I'm talking about in terms of the spin-offs of these cartoons.
Oh, the Trinity, okay.
The Trinity, yeah. Like, if you ask me what are my favorite PSP spin-offs, yes, I will go the God of War one. But I thought we were talking about the Trinity.
Oh, no, sure, okay.
So far, in terms of I'm liking the music of this.
Yeah, I was about to say,
the other games.
I'm happy to report, much like with Science Matter was a step in the direction, but I argue, yes, this is David Bergerol's best score to date for this particular franchise. There will be highlights more later, but even already from the get-go, you definitely get a bit of a groove, because much like with the story, David is actually unapologetically parodying every single thing from the Bond movies, including music genres, you know. And I argue again, it's that South Park effect of taking itself seriously but working by that fault. Again, you have to treat this game in that kind of mentality and think it more as a comedy that is taking itself seriously.
And Niels is, again... Also,
Robotic
also
came
part of the
in,
music
first
crew.
of all, from ball bearings and springs, but soon found an ecological niche in customer service call centers. Oh dear. Anyway, Dweebs, I guess the future Hitman composer also is here.
Yeah, Niels by Nielsen does additional music again.
In case you're wondering about the lasers, this big distinction is that in neck terms, red's bad because it actually hurts you, but the yellow instead only detects you and actually activates security drones and turrets. The first robotic hands lacked articulation, but their constant thumbs up helped the robots make peace with their neighbors. This cranial model appears often throughout history and has proven particularly appealing to teenagers and other key demographics. Does it?
Huh.
I forgot, what was that Fox animation movie released not too long ago about the kid befriending a robot?
Iron Giant?
No, that's Warner Bros. I'm talking
That's
Fox.
Warner Brothers.
It's done by the same animation studio that is now doing the Ice Age 6. I forgot what it's called, like something wrong with
Blue
Ben
Sky?
or something. Not Blue Sky, Fox Animation. It's very different because it's still active. Me, Pedro, and Edgis covered it the other week.
I'm sorry, what was it?
I forgot. There's a Fox Animation CGI film that came out not too long ago after the Disney buyout, definitely. That is called something like There's Something Wrong with Ben, that is about a kid befriending a robot.
Ron's Gone Wrong.
There you
Yeah,
go.
Ron's Gone Wrong. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I forgot.
Yeah, that was actually pretty good. Yeah.
I
forgot
still
about
need
that
to
one.
see it.
Same.
Anyway, in order to, instead of being an actual Gadgetron vendor, even though they still technically operate on that logic, your level are conveniently disguised phone booths. Of course.
Yeah.
And this way you can get a couple of tricks, both for Ratchet and for Clank. The gimmick is that Clank will use his status as a secret agent to smuggle in things to Ratchet in prison so he can, well, not get killed. We will get to see that in a second. And this includes both, acquiring weapons from the vendor shop, but occasionally finding ones also in the levels. Like in this one, if I recall correctly, I'm not getting it immediately, but right behind me right now, there is a booth that celebrates Ratchet and Clank's effort against the Technomites, and as a result, even the plague says that Ratchet donated his lacerator. For some reason he donated it here, meaning that you can acquire it here, and the next time you have the occasion to play as Ratchet, it will acquire automatically. You even get basically cutscenes to show you that. Again, it will all make sense later, trust me.
So how transparent is the development behind this game? Like, is there a ton of intel, or is it just...
Not much. The only thing that I know is that there wasn't really a lot of dummied out content. As to, this game also contains the high impact treehouse, and they mentioned the stuff that they had to cut away. There is, indeed, but not as much as previous effort. It's technically possibly one of their best efforts in terms of, making sure that the final product resembles what they had in mind. So there is that.
So basically, as far as we know, this was a relatively smooth development that more or less went the way they wanted things to go.
Again, it was basically just Sony wanting to make sure to have a reason for people to pick up the PSP and at the same time bolster the range of VIPs that they were having. A combination of things, despite the fact that the PS3 was a... Yes, Babes?
So are we going to get a lot of cutscenes in this game where we're basically reenacting classic James Bond scenes but with Ratchet and Clank?
Kinda, sorta. We're gonna go through a lot of the beats of what you expect from James Bond spy story. The chase on the snow, the chase on boat, in the equivalent of Venice, the henchman with a gimmick, stuff like that.
Do they parody the Goldfinger iconic scene of the laser to the ball?
Yes.
Do you expect me to? Do you expect me to talk?
Next part, and it's a bit unfortunate because, be able to see immediately in the next part. But pacing-wise, the game might not give you a potential good first impression, because the entire point of this game is Clank investigating about this mysterious theft, about these gemstone that supposedly Ratchet stole, and that is being passed hand in hand by a bunch of, criminals. And our first target, as you will see in the next part, is a Fu Manchu parody. Yeah, you'll be able to see just how we managed to screw that up.
Well,
No,
Fu Manchu
still my
wasn't,
beating heart.
Fu Manchu wasn't even in James Bond.
I don't know
Also-
what to tell you. Well, okay, what about that other spy, Malahuti? What was her name? The spy from India that was also referenced in Casino Royale 1967.
Matahari.
Yeah, did she have to fight him?
While she was referenced in Casino Royale 67.
Well, that's not what I meant. Anyway, yes, Pedro?
No, Mr. Clank, I expect you to die.
Far from being an implemental war, the fabled Rosetta tank turned out to be the bathtub toy of a giant sea creature. Okay, interesting lore.
How random.
This is the equivalent of a Dark Souls item lore written by a Gearbox writer.
Also, the production values on this Secret Agent Clank movie are terrible. That image of Ratchet was so low res.
Yeah, much like we'll talk about it, much like with the Size Matters, once again, played on the emulation with a couple of patches, because again, the unfortunate effect is that these have a lot more the PSP games. The PS1 and PS2 games tend to fare a bit better, not always, but a bit better. But the PSP games definitely never arrived in a state where, when they release, are perfectly fine as they are. They do require at least a couple of updates, because otherwise they crash. Prioritized as usually is the upscaling and not the frame rate. Mind you, in this case I argue it's a bit for the better, because let's just say that there are sequences where I think that if the frame rate had been changed, it would fuck up things more than it already is. Anyway, this beach-going bot manufactures its own carbonation and can shoot natural reserves of suntan lotion at its predators.
How nice.
Coming soon, a Bio-Obliterator retrospective. No!
Why would you?
Yeah, mostly because there's the laser moving. In just a second, there you go. The nagging shrill cries of a tourist bot can shatter glass and cause local business to mark their products up by 300%. Oh dear.
I do find it weird that they would leave something you can read in front of an obstacle that can hit you while you're trying to read it.
It incentivizes you to use the blackout pen if you want.
Cute.
Agency has sent me another device.
Why
get to
couldn't
that.
the agency have simply dropped me where I needed to land?
Conveniently placed upgrades.
Yeah.
Alignment,
This is
the only
important.
competent agent here.
The lack of glowing red eyes and metallic goatees made it impossible to tell which robot here was the evil twin.
Oops.
The contest to determine which robot was the evil one ended in victory for XT3302, who altered the trajectory of a comet to a nearby animal shelter. The whole thing about red eyes and goatee, that's, believe it or not, foreshadowing. That's actually kind of interesting.
Anyway, I guess I mainly asked about the behind-the-scenes stuff because, again, this whole idea feels so random. Like, not just the fact that it's an Agent Clank plot. Like, again, I normally would be okay with that, but the fact that they suddenly tried to make it that, in canon, Clank is an actual secret agent, and not have that be a twist that this is all
And
the
even
villain.
back when I played this game, I did thought that it was just, again, mostly just a parody, nothing real to it. Anyway,
Them
these are
doing
the
ran-
jet
oh.
boots, which means double jump, so there's that at the
Nice.
very least. Again, there will be some platforming. This evil twin display features two robots separated at birth. One went to invent robotic puppies, the other invented telemarketing. Can you figure out which robot is good and which is evil? Hint, try looking at their molecular densities.
You see, it turns out the one who made telemarketing is actually the good guy. Surprise twist.
That would be neat, I guess.
Those robotic puppies were actually secretly programmed upon the pressing of a button to do evil stuff.
Here we go. Now we switch to a different gameplay style, which meaning that Clank has to extra stealthily go towards this hall in order to get to the crime scene where the diamond was stolen. Now, again, you will think that you will have to do some particular thing of stealth, but no, instead we have a Raven game. And boy howdy, the Raven section in these are punishing as hell. Like, it's very subtle. It starts relatively nice, you think, oh, that's not too bad, perfectly easy to grasp. But very soon, you will be able to see in just a few, sections, the game decides to take away the kidney gloves and like, yeah, you're good enough for DDR, at least medium mode. Go ahead, champ, be my guest. And it gets ridiculous as the game goes on. This is not helped by the fact that there is definitely some input lagging, and not all the time the input really matches what the score is going for. And in case you're wondering, well, maybe that's just a problem with the emulation, the emulator is chugging up. As someone who played the original version of the PSP, no, it really was like this. The hardware of the PSP really could not process this kind of thing, and I don't know why they bothered to actually keep it for the amusement, I guess, but they could have made it into something else, I don't know. Or at least make it more easy. This is just the developers having a laugh behind my back.
It feels like High Impact ran off of the mentality of, oh, here's a cool idea, let's put it in without ever second-guessing themselves on
Put a pin on that, because that's... Okay, remember how people noted that Crash Wrath of Cortex had a lot of weird gameplay style right from the get-go? This is not too far from that, although... Okay, it's both more noticeable, but less obnoxious about it. It's very complicated with this game, because on one hand, it's understandable and overall still relatively fun to play, but on the other it can get really excruciating, and that's why a lot of people really consider it a low point.
I do find it especially weird, though, that the rhythm game doesn't, go with the music that's playing. Like, that seems
there
like
will
the
be
obvious
one
thing
occasion
to do.
later where it does. There are three major sections of rhythm game. This one in the middle and one very relatively late. Only the one in the middle is relatively music themed and actually as a result matches as the symbols matching what's going on. The third one doesn't even attempt to have music that matches the button prompt, believe it or not.
The only thing keeping it from basically just being Simon Says is the fact that they don't, tell you to repeat a
Trust
prompt.
me, we'll get to that in a few parts, so don't worry. And again, in case you're wondering, well, okay, DCs can be very punishing, but what happens if you fail? Like, do you get an instant game over? No, thankfully, but... depending on the sequence, if you fail in a specific way, look at this shit.
Jesus.
Clank will actually fail the sequence and take damage, as I think I'm about to showcase. So you can take some punishment, especially depending on how much nanotech you have, but if you fail repeatedly, you're gonna eventually get a game over. Now, thankfully, for the purpose of the game, you don't have to perfect this shit. So you do need it if you want a skill point at the very least, and for this emulated version, also a trophy. So if you want a platinum, you better get good or start cheating using the replay function.
Oh, never mind.
I get the feeling this is probably another the reason why they didn't try to have the frame rate be a consistent 30, because it might have made these sequences a bit harder because it would go faster, probably.
Not just that, it probably will screw things over with the input. I know for a fact that there is some bizarre coding in the PSP because I didn't... Oh, look, check this out. You do get a skill point if you manage to perfect almost the entirety of the sequence, but you fail at the last second, by the way. So the game encourages you to replay this, so keep that in mind.
Beeswax, made by Use Your Noodle Cookie Company, Asianica. I believe I have found a clue to the location of the eye.
Of course, there's a thriving black market there. They must be trying to unload it.
So is he the body penny equivalent?
Basically. Clank, you get it? Because Lost was a thing at the time.
Those are lucky numbers.
Yes, I remember when there was speculation and not people raging about a bad ending.
Honestly, I do wonder... Okay, well, I can mention later. Meanwhile, in Prison Planet...
Where am I? Who are you?
So, we're instead hitting on Ratchet every single prison cliche you can find, including the warden, which is an oversized Texan guy with a belt buckle and a very, very bad attitude.
The last thing I remember was brushing my teeth and then...
Yeah, everyone in here is innocent. This may be a bit of a shock to the system, but if you want to survive in here for more than today, you better have a little fight in you.
Huh?
It seems that a lot of these folks were put in here by you, and they got a score to settle.
Aren't you supposed to protect me?
Normally,
This is a bit of a breaker thing towards the pace. You get this cutscene where, you know, Clank is thrown into the action, but the game still has to register the fact that you're getting the weapon that Clank is actually smuggling to you. So we're at the end of this cutscene where you're thrown into the fight. And when we cut to a cutscene where Clank with Ratchet is getting the weapon back in the cell.
So what was even the point of having the scene end with him being thrown out? I guess he
guy
survived that
is a
first
cake,
fight
that's
this
cute.
time.
So what happened? Are they like, nah, I just wanted to chuck you out the cell. Alright, get back in there.
Again, it's pace breaking and unfortunate because they wanted to have the cutscene that showcased that Ratchet got the weapon, but they didn't not wanted that to happen potentially, you know, in any specific point, and we just wanted to happen in a generic way. Anyway, Ratchet section, which played exactly like Inside Matters, arguably a bit better because your arsenal is actually better designed this time around. And in terms of anime variety, they made sure to actually respect the games so far. You get Blargs from the first game, Thugs for Less and specific robots, Megacorp robots from the second game, the Tyrannoids from the third game, and the Hedgehog guys from Deadlocked. It's actually relatively clever, but because, you know, the entire mechanic is that the people here are the ones that Ratchet locked up, meaning that, yes, apparently the Tyrannoid got cured from being roboticized, apparently.
And it seems like people survived the Deadlock station being blown up as well.
Apparently. Again, as considering this is still supposed to be an in-universe episode, these just are like rolling with it potentially. I don't know.
I do find it weird that, again, they remembered that bout of continuity, but again, forgot that Agent Clank is just a character in a show.
Oh, but
not
don't you
an
see, Joe? It's more of a
agent.
case where this was kept secret all the time, and the Imperials was actually right to guess all along.
Oh, is that what the plot goes with?
Not really. But this game is, in terms of plot, this game is connected to Ratchet and Clank 3 in some manners, at the very least.
It is just it's always been one of the most baffling things I found, when clearly somebody did do their research to get some very, very deep cuts, but then forgot one of the more blatant plot details of continuity. Again,
or at the
maybe
very
it was
least chose
just...
to ignore deliberately.
That might be the case. It reminds me a bit of Thieves in Time, where, well, we've gone over how Thieves in Time has some continuity snarls of its own, which was likely just the team wanting to do their own special thing, in which case, sure, I'm glad you may have had fun with it, but in hindsight, it just looks silly. But hey, you know, like you said, we've got the retcon that this is in-story an actual episode or movie of Agent Clank, so hey, I guess it all evens out.
And again, the story as a whole has never been referenced much like Size Matters, so it doesn't matter. Anyway, each arena that Ratchet will have to fight is just a bunch of horde modes, and it has a gimmick. In this case, a massive fan in the middle, which it's not particularly helpful even on a visual level. I get the gimmick about pulling you in and forcing you to stay in a closed area, but even visually can get a bit annoying. And towards one of the final rounds, because again each arena has multiple different type of encounters that Ratchet can show, but I'll only showcase only the first major case for each. The hardest challenge, make sure that the fan is activated all the time towards the end, and it gets really, really distracting.
Also, apparently this prison is very lax since they let all the
prisoners
prisoners
they showcased at the beginning, Jova, it's an entire planet, so yeah. It's a prison planet, kind of like with Chronicles of Riddick.
Well, my point is they're very lax because they let the prisoners just have weapons. Like, do they do this intentionally to give themselves entertainment?
Prison cliches, Jova. Again, we're reading almost all of them. If you're thinking about also that one, we'll have to get to there. It's yes and no at the same time. We'll get there.
Okay. Alright.
Like I said, there are different kinds of, challenges that you can, have for the specific place. But again, I'll just avoid showing because there's nothing much too stimulating to show. Anyway, tune in instead for the next part, where Clank has to travel to its first major location to search the trail of a diamond, Asianica, for the Fu Manchu pastiche. See you for that.
Oh boy.
See ya.
Yeah.
See ya.